Hey Nat,
Hello.
welcome back to
Yes.
our interviews here, January 2025, on our topic today being and perimenopause and menopause. We're going to take a look at that, and I think this will be very helpful to a lot of professional women out there who experience challenges with this stage of life. So, why don't you start by introducing some of the symptoms and the age ranges affected by each of the symptoms that you're going to mention?
Yeah. So I think when we're talking about perimenopause, it might be helpful to kind of explain what that is. So perimenopause is really the stage before women actually reach menopause, which is, a cessation of your period. You are no longer bleeding, you are no longer going through your cycle. So the whole time before, which could range from anywhere from even 35 years old all the way to 50. There's a big age range there where slowly your ovaries start making less and less estrogen. So in your mid 30s, you might notice some differences in metabolism, in just your sleep, also as well as just, the things that you're able to do and how much you're able to take on. Your body somewhat kind of slows down, right? And even as we go, it's like just a natural way of aging. So some other symptoms that you might experience, I would say most likely later on, so like mid 40s to 50s, is that's when you really start noticing the irregular periods. Hot flashes might be coming and going. The fatigue, a lot of women have stated that their sleep is very much impacted. Um, Recently I had someone, they're like, yeah, like I spoke with like ladies and they were telling me, yeah, like say goodbye to like good sleep because that's not going to happen.
Mhm.
Brain fog, memory issues as well. And then also joint and muscle stiffness is something that you're going to slowly start experiencing. And that can also be symptoms of, the decline of estrogen. And then once you kind of reach your 50s, that's really when you're like in it for like menopause. Menopause is happening, and the actual event of menopause means that you haven't bled or gone through a cycle for at least 12 months.
Mhm.
So once a whole year has passed and you haven't had any bleeding, that means that you have reached menopause
Mhm.
and pretty much your ovaries are like, my job here is done.
Mhm.
And then your estrogen is almost non-existent, which then can present as vaginal dryness, loss of bone density, and then also sleep still is impacted, and you might notice a difference in your metabolism and gaining weight becomes a lot easier, which is something that we can dive a little bit more into.
Yes, I've noticed that as well. And my doctor, 5 years before I hit menopause, said to me, start now to maintain your weight because it's going to become much, much more challenging. And it has been. I mean, I could lose a pound or two right now, but that's pretty good considering that I went through like a surgical menopause 2 years ago. So that's really insightful. So, what would be the impact of these symptoms being unattended during these stages?
Yeah. One of the things that I think is really important to kind of think about is prevention,
Mhm.
right? And exactly like your doctor said, is
Mhm.
before you even reach where you're experiencing symptoms, you want to start thinking about it. And it's nice that menopause and perimenopause is kind of right now the topic of conversation. And I myself, I'm in my 30s and I work with women who are like in their mid 30s and they're thinking about how do I want to age? What are the things that I can do to really support my body? Because if you don't, then again, that bone density loss, it could even lead to things like osteoporosis. You're
Right.
more likely to have fragile bones. And if you fall later on in life, then you're going to break your bones and you want to avoid that because then healing is going to be a lot slower. Mood swings as well. Like we think of estrogen kind of just as something of reproductive health, but estrogen plays so many other roles in our body as well. So mood, and we might notice that we're a little bit more irritable and our window of tolerance is a lot smaller than it used to be in our early 30s, in our 20s, right? Again, with sleep, and if our sleep is impacted, that very much impacts our mood, that impacts our cortisol levels, right? And it's
Mhm.
like all these different things that are really playing almost against you. So it's really important to prepare ahead and the food and exercise. What is it that you're doing now
Mhm.
before you get to that point where you're experiencing brain fog? You don't have as much energy. Maybe you don't feel like you can do as much, but you're building those habits in small, sustainable ways so that you can do better later on.
Mm. Sounds like a smooth transition.
That's always the goal. That's what we want.
That's right. So, how can nutrition help alleviate some of these symptoms and restore inner balance with the meals we prepare?
One of the main things that we should always be focusing on, but should really highlight when we are reaching perimenopause, is blood sugar regulation.
Right.
So this kind of plays a role in metabolism and the way in which our body takes in food. And is it going to be able to successfully use that food? Are we going to be able to exercise and increase movement to make use of all of that energy? Or
Mhm.
is our body just going to be in energy storage mode? So
Right.
you want to be looking at blood sugar, which then affects insulin levels. And that's something that we want to do by balancing our macros. And I think in all of my videos, I very much talk about
Okay.
this of that message of, do you have a source of protein? Do you have a source of fiber? Do you have a source of healthy fats in there? All of which are going to be supportive of not just balancing blood sugar, but the healthy fats for brain health, right? That brain fog and memory. Then the fiber. Fiber is really important for being able to detoxify and get certain hormones out of our bodies. And then protein. If we are losing muscle mass, not muscle mass, if we're losing calcium on our bodies, because that's related to estrogen, and our bone density is decreasing, then we want to increase muscle mass. And we can only do that if we're having enough protein.
Okay. That's very well explained. So simple too. It's so simple, really, to include these nutritional elements in our daily meal plan. Okay, so what other considerations would we need to take into account? Any medical conditions we should think about that may affect the way we adapt and transition during this period?
For sure. One of the things that, right, it's like anything dealing with metabolism and hormones. So if you have like a thyroid disorder, then you might want to plan ahead of what that's going to look like when your body's going through those changes. If you have things like PCOS and your hormones are already not in balance, right? You have a little bit more testosterone, so that might also be impacted.
Mhm.
If you have diabetes already, and then you're reaching menopause and your blood sugar regulation and the way in which your body takes in energy is changing even more, then you want to plan ahead. And I think really being able to do that is, what are your habits leading up to that life stage?
Right.
And then also having the proper support. So it's not just on you, right? And it's a lot of maybe the wellness industry is like, oh, well, like you're in charge, it's your choice. Yes. And
Yes,
and
absolutely.
there's a need for intervention sometimes. Like sometimes you can be eating all the right foods, you might be exercising 3 times a week, doing your weight training, resistance training, drinking lots of water, your sleep is great. But there's other things going on that you might
Mhm.
need a little bit more support. So you might need hormone therapy, which is something that if you are curious about how to support that, you can connect with your doctor and ask them more about that. You might need to do blood work so that you know where you're at and And if you need more support, depending on the different things that kind of come up, one of the easiest ways and kind of one thing that I always recommend when it comes to perimenopause and into menopause is including more phytoestrogens into your diet. So if you are naturally not creating as much estrogen in your ovaries and your body overall, then you can take plant estrogens that are going to be able to support that transition in a way that is a little bit more smooth and not as like, okay, we're here, our estrogen's good, and then we're like plummeting all the way down. And
Right.
food is a really good way to kind of support that.
Yes, yes, it is. And I can't say my transition has been smooth, especially because I had a surgical menopause, which is very sudden. I was warned about the symptoms, the first 3 to 6 months. However, I'm pretty content with the way it's been going, and I have to say, food has been very impactful in that transition, especially the protein that I take, which is vegan, which is full of the legumes and that you're talking about, the phytoestrogens. So I think there are ways to definitely smooth it out. So when you say to plan ahead, what would you say would be the right time period to plan ahead, say for perimenopause? I guess we would start with perimenopause because it all begins there. So when would someone plan ahead to be prepared for perimenopause, which will then set them up for menopause?
I think of kind of where I am, drawing from my own personal
Yeah.
experiences. And being in your 30s, I think is the right time where you might want to switch your mindset from, okay, like weight loss and more aesthetic goals, right? Which is there's nothing wrong with that, but maybe swapping in and bringing in a little bit more of how do I want to feel and what freedoms do I want to have when I am in my elder years? And that's kind of the mindset that I've kind of swapped into.
Mhm.
Even when I go and I work out, it's like doing more mobility and building
Yes.
muscle in areas where, it's not just about like having like the glutes and the flat stomach, but it's like you need muscles in your overall body so that you can do simple things. Like I always tell people do you want to be able to take a shower by yourself and be independent when you are like 70 and 80 years old?
Yes.
That means doing the work now so that you can
Mhm.
have that freedom later on. And that is going for walks, doing resistance training. You don't have to do like this crazy routine, but it's something that's sustainable and then you can build on. And if you can keep it for a long period of time, that's going to transition you into when you're, in like midlife and later on, and it's going to be part of your routine, of your habits, and it's going to just be easier
Yeah.
rather than you reach 40 and you're experiencing this and you're like, I need to do like a total life change now. And it's going to be harder. It's not impossible, but it's just harder. So
Yeah.
start early and think about what your goals and your reasonings are long term.
Yes, that sounds wonderful. I love the sounds of that. So, how would somebody connect with you to help them transition smoothly into perimenopause and then menopause through nutrition and your holistic approach?
One of the things that I always kind of ask is like, what are your goals, right? What are we working towards? And then being able to build resources and supports around that.
Mhm.
So bringing in balance. So that looks like what foods are we introducing? What are some things that we might want to swap in? And maybe add a little bit more. A lot of the times when we're talking about balanced nutrition, a lot of women are surprised as to how much you should actually be eating compared to what the diet culture kind of says.
Mhm.
So you
Mhm.
need to be nourishing your body and eating enough. And you don't know that unless you're talking to someone or, tracking your macros of being able to say, is this enough for my body? for all of the different things that I need it to do and where I am in life.
Mhm.
So being able to do kind of that audit to figure out, is this enough for me? Then also bringing in those habits of, okay, how often do we want to exercise? What does exercise and movement actually look like for you? And then keeping you accountable and keeping you on track to actually do the things that is then going to be super beneficial just in longevity in general. So that ongoing support and that motivation and knowing that you're not in it alone and someone who's going to be able to tell you it's work, right? Like all of this is work. It's not easy.
Mhm.
And it's an investment for yourself. But being able to have the right tools, especially in a climate where there's so much information out there, but being able to personalize something and having individualized support can really make the difference of setting you up for success. And then you have the information and you can go and do your thing, and it feels like I've got this.
Right. And you can always lean on your support system to, go through the little hiccups or bumps that you may encounter on the way, like I have, like you probably are starting to experience as well. So it's great to know that your clinic is also available. You want to mention a little bit about where you're located and how they can meet you in person.
Yes, so I am located in Port Credit in Mississauga, for anyone who is in Ontario, as well as in Toronto West, so Little Italy area, and you can book with me and come in person. But I'm also available online for anyone who is more like, I've already been out and about. I just want to see you online, and if you are not in Ontario, you can also book with me. But I am at Advanced Women's Health, which is a naturopathic clinic that specializes in all things women's health from first period all the way through menopause. So it is really great to really work with a collaborative team where I work with doctors who are able to send you out, do the blood work, give you that hormone therapy if it's needed, give you those supplementations that are going to be specific to where you're at. And then you work with me, who's going to be able to guide you with the nutrition and the habits and really keep you accountable to following that treatment plan that the doctor has given you so that you can feel good and not feel like perimenopause and all of these hormonal shifts have had kind of taken over your life and you don't feel like yourself anymore.
Right, right. And so I see on the screen your name, Natalie Osterling. So you have a website, natalieosterling.com, correct? And you also have
Yes.
your handle on Instagram, which is where we met because of your valuable content. And it's at Natalie Osterling, correct?
So I recently changed it. So it's
Oh,
Natalie.
okay.
Yes, it's at Natalie on Wellness.
Okay.
But if you search Natalie Osterling, you'll be able to find my page.
Okay.
I just changed it a little bit so it's easier for people to find out what is it that I actually do. And I talk all things wellness, holistic wellness.
Awesome. Fantastic. Okay. So thank you again, Natalie. And I will be posting this in on YouTube. I'll be posting this on our LinkedIn Wellness Hub. And stay tuned.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
Bye. Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.